Okay, the first thing that we need to do with a wood wall is brace it with some thick bracing on the back to prevent warping. Here we're using 1/8 inch square bracing, and just cut it to fit the vertical height of the wall every inch to inch and a half or so. And just glue it to the edge and make sure it's flush with the edge of the wall, especially with the pitched roof sections, because you'll be joining them to another section, and it needs to be flush for that connection. We're using white glue here. This is canopy glue. You can certainly use Elmer's glue as well, but the canopy glue is a little bit more water resistant, so that's why we like to use it. And if you get a little glue spilling out onto the edges, we're not going to worry about that because we're going to file that off later. Once you have your bracing in place, flip the wall over and find a heavy weight to let it dry nice and flat. We stain all of our walls with a wash of alcohol and ink first. This way, if there's any paint that shows through later, you won't see any bright wood color. And then we can add our acrylic white paint or whatever color you choose. We want to paint the lower section of this wall a different color just to give it some more interest. So we're going to use blue painter's tape, which has got a low adhesive, so when we peel it away, it won't peel any of our other paint away. I'm going to take a dark green color in this case, and it'll be the same color as our trim later. And we're using a synthetic sponge, and we're going to take as much paint off the sponge as we can, similar to dry brushing. And then once we're ready, we're going to sponge it on the wall in just sort of a random pattern. You could certainly paint it a solid color, but we want the paint to look like a peeled effect, so that's why we're using this sponge. And then once it's dry, peel the tape away. Okay, now we're going to add a sign to our wall, and it's a sign that's going to look painted right onto the clapboard. There are several ways to glue the sign on. We can use Elmer's glue, but it's a bit messy, so we're going to use our 3M transfer tape. It's a very thin adhesive film that is applied with this tape backing. So we just put it onto the back of the sign and cover the whole surface. And then just cut the sign away from the paper with the backing on the back. Now we're just going to test fit the location to make sure it's going to go where we want it to go, and then peel off the backing of the film. And first just press it gently where you want it in case you have to pull it up again. We're just going to press it down. And then once you're sure, rub it down. And then with your fingernail, rub each section of the clapboard so that you see this pronounced line. And this is what's going to give it that appearance that it's painted directly to the clapboard. Once we're done rubbing it down to the clapboard, we're going to trim off the excess paper from the sign. Now, to make it look like it's fading and peeled, we're going to apply the same white color we used on the walls to appear as if it's showing through the black paint. Again, we're using our synthetic sponge. Okay, now we're using Polyscale earth. This color seems to represent wood well, so we use it to make it appear as if the wood is showing through both the black paint and the white and green paint. So you can sponge this over the entire surface of the wall. Now at some point, if you think you've put on too much of the earth color, you can go back with the white sponge and blend in on top of that as well. So there's no limit to how many times you can go back and forth between these colors until you get the effect you want. Of course, the more white you add, the more faded the entire surface will look, which is fine. And then we can't forget that our corner trim should have whatever treatment you used on the walls. In this case, we're putting the Polyscale earth, so it looks like the green paint has peeled down to the wood color underneath. Okay, at this point you can add rows of nails, and if you do so, do it directly over the sign as well as the wall. Nails, of course, are a matter of preference. Some modelers like to show them, some don't. But we use a pounce wheel and a straight edge, and we space them apart every scale 24 inches. And again, if you want to weather the wall even further, you could take a straight edge razor blade and lift as many or as little of the clapboards as you like to make it appear even more run down. Now, in order to get a good fit when we join the walls, we sand the edges first with a small jeweler's file, and this will remove any paint and or glue that might have gotten over the edge of the walls. Just gently file it just slightly, just enough to get it down to a nice smooth flush surface with your bracing. And then apply a thin bead of your glue. And then we're going to apply our corner trim, and we've cut it slightly longer than we need to. To get a good fit, we're going to cut it after it's glued in place. We'll just flip it over, and then with a straight edge razor blade, cut it flush with the bottom of the wall, and then cut it flush with the top. Now, if the structure you're building is from a kit, generally the manufacturer will include some kind of diagram or template to show you exactly where both the interior wall bracing and the corner trim goes. So just follow those diagrams as you build the kit. Once you have the corner trim in place, you can weather the walls with some weathering chalk powder. Generally we use a mud-colored chalk for the very bottom of the wall to represent any mud that might have splattered from rain falling off the roofs. But you can also take some other lighter colors like this light gray and just apply it here and there, just again to add more variety. Okay, now before we join our walls together, we're going to take our jeweler's file and we're going to file away any more glue that might have seeped between the corner trim and the wall. This will give us a great fit. A lot of times you'll see gaps in wall joins, and it's because of these tiny pieces of glue and paint, and if you use the file, it'll take care of all those edges. So you want to do that to the joining wall as well. And then once you're ready, test fit the walls first to make sure you've gotten everything filed out of there. Okay, now that we're happy with the fit, we're going to draw a small bead of glue in the corner of the corner trim and the bracing. And if you put too much, use a small stick to remove any excess as well as your finger, because we don't want any glue seeping out between the joints. And press the walls in place. And to make sure they're at 90 degrees, have a small machine square handy, and you can check the angle and make sure everything is straight. Now you can practice these techniques on a smaller kit or some scrap, but eventually you'll come to see that you can apply them on any size kit, and you'll get excellent results.